My name is L.S. Subramanian. Of course, I'm an old bandicoot at this, as Babu mentioned. And I love technology. I love cyber, love cloud, anything evolving. Been there, done that. Happy to host this and thank Banking Frontier for giving me the opportunity and Akamai. Okay. So we will go on to the panelists one by one. I just have it in some order here. It doesn't mean somebody is senior or junior. So first we will start with Biju. Biju, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself? Biju is the CISO, Head of Operational Risk and Information Security, Federal Bank.
As Subbu rightly introduced, I am the CISO for Federal Bank. I am in this role for the last 7 years. Prior to that, I was with the technology team, handling projects, implementation, support, etc. So in addition to this, I am a member of the Untitled Chapter also. So that I also head the operational risk management activity of Federal Bank.
Subhajit is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer of SBI Mutual Fund. Subhajit, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Subramaniam, and good afternoon to everybody. It is my pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. So I am the Head of Technology in SBI Mutual Fund, which is mostly known, formally it's known as SBI Funds Management. So we manage the assets of all the SBI Mutual Fund, almost 1+ crores of investors, retail and corporates. And the current assets we manage is more than 4 lakh crores of rupees. So today we are the #1 asset manager in the country. So with that, and today I'm looking after, my responsibilities include entire information technology of the company, starting from new initiatives, operations and other projects.
I'd like to now introduce Gurpreet Singh Grewal, DGM and CISO of IDBI Bank. Gurpreet.
Hi everyone. Good evening. So I've been with IDBI Bank for the last 21 years now. Last 10 years in info security, and pretty much that's it. We will talk about a lot of security today. So you'll get to know more, maybe hopefully, about something on APIs and security in that regard. That's it.
Thank you, Gurpreet. So next we, of course, I think most of you know Asim Ahmed, Senior Product Manager, Cloud Security, Asia Pacific and Japan at Akamai Technologies. So a little bit about you. Asim, I did go through your LinkedIn profile, confession. Very interesting. You need to talk because I spent a lot of time setting up Cloud Security Alliance in Mumbai many years back. Okay. Anyway.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Subbu. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Asim. I am responsible for overall success of cloud security products at Akamai in Asia Pacific and Japan. My role is very diverse, so I speak with a lot of customers, understand market requirements, what they do, where market is heading in terms of technology, security, the different threats that we are seeing, and ensuring that our customers get the best and breed solutions, and the businesses remain protected.
Krishraj Sharma, Director and Chief Executive Officer, iValue Info Solutions, please.
Yeah, so my name is KRS, Krishnaraj Sharma, fondly known as KRS. As a CEO of iValue Info Solutions, organization is around 12 years old. Business practice is VAD, value added distribution. We created a little bit of different go-to-market for us by, forming, vertical practices, including BFSI.
Mr. Babu Nair needs no introduction. So, but Babu, I think to be fair, you need to introduce yourself because you are the master of ceremonies today. So, a few words, Babu, what you do for a living.
So, friends, I am Babu Nair. So, I don't think I have not been, unknown to most of you, but anyways. So, I am the founder of Banking Frontiers, which I founded about in 2002, with a focus with the intention to focus purely in the area of financial services and the technologies related to that. So I learned banking, I knew technology, I started my career in journalism in technology in the Express Computer. But I learned banking in the last 18 years, which I have been with Banking Frontiers, whatever little bit I could learn from friends like you. And I also try to create a Uberization of all the knowledge that I could gain over all this period from all your friends and try to share it with as many people in the industry, creating platforms. We have also recently launched a video platform called as Banking Frontiers Live, where we interview some very interesting bankers, 2 to 3 of them every week. So this is in short the introduction.
Thank you, Babu. So I think we'll go on to the next thing. So can I ask Akamai to make a short presentation and maybe jump through the COVID slides? And it's your call. It's your presentation.
Yeah, the intention today from the presentation, as Babu and Subbu mentioned, was more from our perspective, being the world's largest distributed platform, and serving more than 350 financial services country, top tier of them, on our platform, was to provide you some sort of insights that we are seeing in terms of threats. What are some of the key elements that we believe are really integral to build and retain the trust of the consumers for these disruption times, even beyond. And again, from the perspective of maintaining security of apps and APIs, how important it is for the businesses today, and likewise. All right, so I'll quickly skim through some of these slides. I know we don't want to take too much time here, but in essence, just like any other industry, financial services has also been impacted with the pandemic, right? Specifically with the organizations which were still on the journey of on the digital transformation front. Many of them had to accelerate the journey overnight because of the very fact that the consumers could no longer come to the banks. You have to think beyond your brick and mortar sort of a model, and everything become app driven, or low touch driven, right? And that's where most of the organizations which are non-financial in nature, we're still used to working from home. Specifically with this pandemic, now we got the concept of banking from home, right? So, banks have to think about moving their employees to work from home. The users were not coming out of the branches; they were staying at homes. Even the likely chances of using your ATM machines, and at the same time, your digital adoption is increasing, and the user experience demands are growing up, right? We've seen high traffic growth on existing apps and APIs which are there on the platform. Under all of this, where the organizations are struggling to accelerate their digital journey, there is a backdrop of risks that come in COVID-19. So cyber attackers have been working from home for very long. We are just getting started on that front. So they know that there is a digital push, and this is more chances for them to attack your digital endpoints. And that's why it's really become, from our perspective, uh, it's really important to retain the trust now more than it has been in past, right? So security is of a paramount importance right now for the organizations. Investing in the right security products, there are tons of them out there. Making sure that your security strategy aligns with what's out there. Making sure that you monitor your user behaviors, which is their interaction and what's driving their interaction towards your apps and APIs and your content, right? Optimizing the user experience. It's no longer just about providing a site that is accessible, but rather, even in the busiest of the times, making sure that your time to first byte or your response time is really, really minimal, right? And obviously, when you do all of this, you need to have a consistent practice to make sure that you are validating your hypothesis and your theory. So if you know that your performance is better than what it was yesterday, do you have data points to back it up? If you know that your security is better than yesterday, then you do not. Do you have the data points, or are you validating that actually? And from what we're seeing, during the COVID times, is that financial services still continue to remain the top choice for the attackers. We've seen every time there's a DDoS campaign being launched. We've seen one in August. Attacker groups like Fancy Bear, as an example, or Armada Collective have been targeting financial services institutions worldwide. Web attacks continue to be a very popular choice against APIs, and more so on the fraudulent attacks, stemming out of credential stuffing, where the attackers are trying to log in to your APIs. We've seen in a financial services, it's highly concentrated, meaning the attackers are constantly trying to break into your systems using fraudulent login attempts. So the key thing is to obviously maintain the right balance, which is not easy to do, right? At one hand, you've got user experience, and I hear this term more so from Babu every time I speak with him, is the concept of frictionless security, which is so important uh, in today's world, especially in pandemic, right? Too much security, which does not work, is of no use. Too much better user experience, which is not secure, is of no use either, right? So how do you really balance between user experience and different sort of security measures that you need is a very tricky balance to achieve. And API fuels a majority of the conversations that we have today, especially on the digital adoption and ecosystem, right? We've heard things like open API concept, open banking concept, and this is where majority of the organizations today, specifically on the financial services side, are barely working to expose their APIs, and the early journey has not been very fruitful or seamless. There are a lot of API failures. Many APIs fail to meet the expectations because of not really understanding the business needs. There are a lot of performance issues encountered. So many organizations roll out APIs, but they have to roll back in because they did not have the right scale to handle those API requests. They didn't anticipate that sort of traffic, right? Reliability of API system becomes a huge issue, and more so importantly, APIs get targeted 4 times more than a usual web form and websites. And the security is really, really paramount when it comes to API. So in terms of what's really causing all of this API security lapses is that APIs have high expectations and broader challenges as you compare to any other business which is tech driven today, right? From the business side, APIs is all about innovation. You need to be rolling out the products and microservices to the market very faster, right? It's about making sure that the services are stable. You can unlock new revenue potentials or opportunities, integrate with multiple parties or third-party providers or platforms that gives you more users, right? New user experience being unlocked. But for the attackers, it presents a different sort of opportunity, right? Attackers are more focused on APIs now that they have been in past, because they know that most of the digital adoption now is API driven, right? So things like data theft, denial of service attacks, credential stuffing becomes really ever growing threat landscapes on APIs, right? On the other side, you also have to now balance or worry about how do you really measure the consumption of APIs by the legitimate users, right? This is where you need to make sure, are you really getting the benefits or the ROIs on your APIs? Monetization of APIs become, important at that point of time, right? And many businesses today don't know what is the impact of, or what is the risk of not having a robust security solution on a specific API endpoint. There could be 100 microservices running behind, and those things are pretty unknown for many businesses today, right? Now, APIs bring about different security problems, and one of the bigger security problems today is credential stuffing or account takeover attacks, mostly towards financial services. So if you put things to perspective, there was a research done last year where a high-tech computer, not a supercomputer, but a high-tech computer was able to break or guess 100 billion passwords per second, right? Now, from that perspective, today's cloud computing brings about new challenges or arms and ammunition that the attackers can leverage to break into the accounts, right? This is one post I really like on Twitter by a guy who did some math around if they were to leverage today's cloud computing platforms, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, an example, how much time will they take to break into the user accounts, right? It could be a e-commerce, financial services, doesn't matter, right? Assuming that the attacker only had $25, because the cloud services have become so cheap and instances can be launched pretty quickly. Using just $25 on AWS instance, they could break your 8-character password in less than 12 minutes or less, right? And most of these attackers that we're talking about are highly financially motivated attackers. I'm sure they have much more than $25 in their pocket to break into your accounts, right? So if you multiply that 6 times, 10 times, maybe more, you can begin to assume how much of tech power they have at their disposal without actually compromising or making large botnets. They don't have to do it because they can use bots now, all those scripts on cloud platforms, right? And this is where it becomes really important for the organizations today to even begin to visualize how bigger this threat is, right? So from the perspective of the API security measures and gap, we will have much more broader discussion towards, after my presentation here, but we see that many organizations still rely on traditional measures as it comes to API protection, right? Many organizations assume that, yeah, you've got encryption, then yes, that is a defense in depth strategy, and yeah, that's a good technique. I'm not saying that you don't need it, but it's not sufficient enough, right? We see things like rate throttling, okay, maybe limiting certain IPs or whitelisting certain IPs, signature-based measures, and a weak access control mechanism like HTTP mutual auth or using weak API key exchanges, token-based authentication as an example. These are traditional ways using which organizations have been trying to protect their APIs. But given the recent attacks that we've seen, this strategy falls flat pretty quickly, right? What we really need is to uh, bridge that gap, and the gap is more on the fundamental aspects of API testing, right? Many organizations do not have resources, nor they understand how to test their APIs, right? API governance is another issue because many organizations today do not really have the right API governance framework that they follow, right? Scaling of APIs is often overlooked. Many organizations don't know what sort of compute resources they will require and what sort of traffic they will see on their APIs. And application security is usually thought of just having a web application firewall and then you're good there, right? Not every web application firewall understands APIs. Not every web application firewall is competent enough to protect against API threats. So this is some of the measures that the organizations need to bridge to reach an optimal level of API security.
See, excellent threat perception. I can give you one more minute and then we move on.
Yeah,
okay.
This is pretty much my last slide. Yeah,
okay.
So from our perspective, right, what we really want to look at is the broader approach that Akamai brings in is we accelerate your APIs by using performance-based features. We protect your APIs using various modules like WAF and bot management, and then we have API governance with API gateway, right? So the right, security architecture, and then this is just one slide that shows how penetrated we are with financial services, more than 350 customers. But the right security architecture we believe is an edge security architecture, right? Using which the financial services can leverage the platform to adopt multiple security practices and defense in depth strategy from DDoS, application protection, form checking and web skimming attacks, bot management, identity protection, and things like that, right? So I think I'll leave that up to you now. We're going to get into the discussion, but the thoughts that we want to leave you with is that with today's threats, we got to think beyond our perimeter. We got to leverage cloud as a security measure because the cyber threats are expanding and the current technology measures are not adequate enough. So back to you, Subbu.
Thank you, Asim. Thank you. That was a good kickoff of the program. Okay. So I think the threat's real. Participants, thank you for joining in. Just be patient with us. So I think Asim has set the tone of the real threats around. He has shown us some of the clients who are using their solutions. And I think some of you are also using their solutions. And I think the cyber threat is really, the cyber threat is true. I just wrote a blog post on COVID and the cyber threat. I think the cyber business has almost multiplied 100 times in the last 6 months. As a business, forget what we do to protect ourselves, but I think it's a fantastic business to be in if you like to be on the other side of the law. Okay, so The first question for the panelist is, time and again, we have seen that financial services remain to be the top choice as an attack target for cyber criminals. Obviously, we have the money, so the finance sector will be the top choice. Okay. Are you seeing any shift in attacks during COVID-19? So, who would like to take that question? So, anybody, it's open.
So yeah, definitely there's a marked, significant, noticeable shift or trend on various types of attacks we are seeing. So both at the maybe at the data center end and also at the endpoint end. So some of the things, if you look at today, since last 6 months, there are few things which are really become more trendy in terms of infosec or cyber attack. So social engineering from the perspective of endpoint or user, social engineering really is becoming very, very common now through phishing and other means. Maybe so various forms of social engineering attack is happening. And on the data center side, based on my experience, I can see 3-4 attacks are happening. One is a lot of brute force attacks attempted at various points of time. A lot of scanning is happening. I've seen on the port scanning, application level scanning at various time. A lot of hits are coming from the blacklisted IPs. And so these are the, I think, and also one of the other trends we are seeing is the VPN. So because most of us are working on a VPN, so how to enter into your VPN network, either through your PIM, privilege access management system, or some other way. So these, according to me, these are the trends which we have noticed based on actual experience. And obviously ransomware attack, which is very, very common.
Thank you, Subhajit. Anybody else wants to add your experience from a real operational situation?
I fully agree to what Subhajit said. So these days, unlike the earlier time, we are seeing a hike in mostly in the social engineering attacks, because it's the right environment for targeting the users. Most of the employees are working from home, and then the attackers are trying to get an entry into the network. So the main attack methodology which we are seeing a hike is the social engineering kind of attacks, mainly phishing, spear phishing kind of attacks are on the rise. So against that, as an organization, we have to take multiple methodologies to prevent against that. So likewise, exploiting vulnerabilities of the applications which are published in the web, like SQL injections, port scanning, all these are on the rise when compared to earlier days. So it's quite natural. So when the usage increases on one side, attackers also are increasing their effort, so that they are trying to get some gains. So during the COVID situation, it is for the risk management team that has to be extra cautious and extra vigilant. So their workload actually increases. They have to put in all kind of monitoring and both preventive and detective mechanisms to protect against the increasing threats.
Thank you for that perspective. I'll move on to the next question unless any other panelists want to add something more. But I think all of, yes, please.
So here, I think social engineering and definitely work from home, all these are areas, but then the demand on the IT infra itself, that has grown tremendously, right? So that is a big challenge. So apart from the pandemic, I think this is another crisis waiting to happen, because a lot of the existing infra which is there is already burdened, right? And now with everything coming from the cloud and people working from remote, because these work from home solutions or whatever, they have been given in a very sudden fashion. They have been not been thought through maybe. So people have been given access from their personal devices, maybe from their mobiles, so that those devices are not as secure or less secure, maybe from the corporate assets, which I can say. So these become very easy targets for the hackers or criminals, because if you remember, I think so, last month alone, Windows had a very critical patch which they had released, which was like very severe in form of severity. And Windows is the only application, maybe OS, is available to all the users in the who are working from home, right? So it is, I think this is one area which is going to be the, or you say, pain point for the IT and the info security together, because the infra is also at mercy of the now the kind of hackers now you have, right?
Yes, it's challenging times, sleepless nights. Yes, but I think we will overcome and we shall overcome as cybersecurity professionals. I'll move on to the next question. The next question really is on a global thing. I think I had the liberty of looking at Asim's LinkedIn profile, so this question is for him. Okay, you have experience working with major financial service institutions across the Asia Pacific region, and of course Japan. What, according to you, are some of the emerging threats against financial services, and are organizations ready to defend against those? So, of course, the rest of the panelists can join in after Asim has given
Sure.
his.
So it's pretty much consistent as to what I've just heard from the esteemed panelists here. Specifically now, this year, we've seen a very significant uptick in phishing attacks. We've seen attackers typically, who are doing these phishing attacks, they do not utilize or reutilize something we call as phishing kits. So softwares typically designed for specific campaigns of phishing, and they get rid of it because they know that somewhere or the other organizations might have built some signatures or mitigations in place for that. We've seen during this time attackers even leveraging or reusing those kits because they know that this is the right time for them to attack as much as possible, because most of the organization have moved in a place where the users are working from home, and this is no longer the secure corporate environment of our offices as we know it, right? So attackers know about it. So definitely phishing is on the rise. We've seen time and again DDoS taking another tip and turn. Like in August, we've seen the new attack wave coming from DDoS attacks. One of the customers got targeted, just a warning shot of 200 gigabit per second of attack. Just from the perspective, okay, give us some money, bitcoins. They don't want money; they want bitcoins, or we will bring your infrastructure down, and they throw the warning shot there, right? So DDoS is definitely one other thing. Web application attacks have grown significantly, 40% year over year, especially during this year, right? And this is where you see SQL injection, cross-site scripting, local file inclusion, these side of attacks, which are becoming more prevalent and even more dangerous, right? Specifically towards APIs. And now they're attacking or looking at the other venues. Majority of the organizations today do not pay a lot of attention to what happens in the user browsers, right? If you look at today's DLP or the solutions that the organizations have to protect the data, a lot of that is focused on the infrastructure or making sure that the data does not get exfiltrated from your network. Now, Maze card attacks, a new wave of attacks that we've seen in the last 2-3 years, they are targeting the user browsers where organizations are trying to capture some sort of data in the forms. So it could be your credit card information, it could be your payment information, right? So from the insurance perspective or banking perspective, let's look at account opening now getting completely online. And they will check for your Aadhaar card, or the user have to input some details in there, right? Imagine now the attacker is able to fetch that data from the browser. And with GDPR in place in Europe, CCPA in US, and India coming up with their own PDP Act, this is going to be extremely trivial for organizations to start protecting the user data in the browser as well. This is another wave of threats that were previously not as much as under focus specifically for financial services, but now they have started paying more attention towards that. So there's lot things happening, and for every time we've seen financial services, as you said earlier, because you've got money, because you've got the user trust. This is the most important place where the attackers can hurt. And we always see this, the attack surface keeps expanding every time something like this happens.
Good. So we can't sleep. There used to be an old ad, Citibank never sleeps. Today CISOs can't sleep. So anybody else wants to add their perspective, or I will
Yeah,
move on to the next question. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, just give me one second. I
Sure,
think
sir.
Asim has touched upon. So mostly we are talking attacks, but there's a data. There's a one of the I think subjects areas he's touched upon: data breach, or data compromise, or data leakage. So most of companies like us, I'm seeing there's a marked difference or significant awareness on data leakage, internally as well as externally. So that is the, I think, again, new trend which has been seen in Indian financial services. So most of the companies as CISOs are becoming very, very aware, and entire risk management, entire organization is becoming how to protect the data breach, and which especially with the remote working.
Sir, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, because the question was, how are we ready as a financial service to defend against this attack, right? So the attacks are many, like maybe Asim missed out, say, video conferencing kind of attacks where Zoom bombing was there, right? So a lot of attacks are there. We can talk about attacks all day long. But to significant, I mean, maybe talk about addressing the immediate COVID related or pandemic related work from home kind of scenario. What are the solutions which we have? Probably the new buzzword is the SASE, right? The secure access service edge, which is there. We are converging all the wide area network and the network security services like CASB, Zero Trust, whatever you call it, cloud service model. All these are now getting clubbed together, and we are bringing in identity-based access, or say context-based access, risk-based access, whatever you call it. You can identify a person, a device, application, service, everything. So this is, I think, one of the areas we are working towards. All financial services, whether it's a customer, whether it's a third party, whether it's a partner system, or whether it's a own employee. This is where I think the future is. We will have to slowly, when we are providing access, this is how the access will be provided going forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Like my Pakistani friends used to say in Dubai, let's go to the masala now of today's seminar, really. So now the threat landscape is very clear. Okay, so let's talk specifically towards APIs as initiative, such as open banking and need to integrate with third-party ecosystem. This is pushing banks to adopt more agile practices, especially with respect to API adoption. Now, API is, like our plumber, ek wire dal do ho jayega. It's almost become like that, and it became very pedestrian without thinking of the security, and that's why it's a very important topic for today's seminar. Okay, but we all know that API security for most organizations is still not being treated on priority, while attackers continue to take advantage of this. How are you dealing with these API threats in your organization? Because many of us have bought out solutions, and API is a reality, right? You have to connect, starting with our Payment Corporation of India, NPCI, for most transactions, plus many more. And all of that today is happening through APIs. So I think over to you, the panelists, esteemed panelists.
Yeah, so rightly said, I can maybe start over here in this. Banks have exponentially increased their digital footprint, right from we began with net banking to mobile banking, SMS banking. Now it's WhatsApp banking, Facebook banking. I think slowly we'll have Zoom banking also. I don't know. So it's everywhere. We are, I think, just going with the technologies one by one. But then all these have started with the API. So API, like Kasim pointed out, is the backbone of all innovations these days. So and the security of those APIs or of those web services, microservices, is very important. So and to us, maybe as a bank, testing is one area which we do, because another area which Asim said, nobody really understands how APIs are made or what, right? Even the security teams, to that matter, are clueless some way, right? Only when they are maybe more into this, like we were at one time for applications or for mobile applications. Now API is the same thing. So we have to learn, and we have to address those issues one by one. So we have products in place, we have security testing solutions in place, we have outsourced skill set to help us maybe do a gap assessment or do a application security testing for the API specifically, and then address those gaps, right? So this is how prima facie we look at it from a banking perspective. Maybe
Thank you. So, any other panelists wants to add your experience on this API security?
Yeah, a few points to add on what Gurpreet mentioned. So API is just like a web service for connecting from the external world to an organization. Basically, there will not be any URL. That's the basic difference. So from a banking perspective, as we all know, and as Mr. Subramanian mentioned, we hold and process large amount of customer data, and hence ensuring the confidentiality of and integrity of the data is of paramount importance. So whether it is an API or a web service or an application hosted on the internet, we have to ensure that the API or the service is foolproof. There are no vulnerabilities outstanding. So just like any other web service, the API also undergoes the same kind of rigorous security testing. All the vulnerabilities identified are supposed to be rectified before moving to the production environment. Then in addition to that, there should be additional monitoring mechanisms, and also the deployment of the APIs can be done through API gateways, wherein we can put a lot of additional controls. So like that, then the authentication mechanism for the APIs with the other party, how we are authenticating them in each connection, that the kind of values, whether it is a push or a pull API, and the kind of values or the data that is getting transmitted to that within the API itself, we can provide reasonable controls. So it has to be like any other security controls. It has to be a defense in depth control mechanism for the APIs also.
Okay, thank you. I think we all understand that, but what is happening today is the hackers are getting smarter. They are much smarter than us. I think most of them have a combined IQ of all of us put together in this panel. Very smart guys. I don't know why they chose that path, and I have a lot of respect for them, whatever they do. So Asim, as an industry practitioner, I want you to tell us something about this API attack business, because this is very significant, and I think there is always a thing, because AI is being fintech, being a new mantra these days. We have a lot of small garages who are coming up with a lot of solutions, okay? And they will be shortcut in the processes, and there are challenges. And however rigorous we try to test it in a vacuum, there will be gaps. And I just want you to just I'll give you 1 minute to share your thoughts on that, because I have more questions to share and ask the panel.
Sure. So I think I completely agree with the panelists here. API security, just like any other security, has to be a defense in depth strategy, right? And as you mentioned, Subbu, the attackers are getting smart, and there is no silver bullet in security. And my personal opinion is there'll never be. It is always going to be a layered security architecture. Now, I think where we're seeing the technology shift is, okay, you've got attackers and you've got these threat actors. Where do you want to stop them? Do you want to stop them at your doorstep, where your data and applications are, or do you want to stop them closest to where they originate or where they live, right? And this is where we're seeing more shift in technology stack, where distributed cloud platforms are being used to leverage on security. And again, the unique thing about that is, because the cloud or edge platform can provide you with a sort of a multi-layered but a uniform security platform. So instead of worrying about different or hundreds of technology stacks and monitoring everything, you get a single consistent pane of glass in which you can monitor the threats and take actions right away. And more importantly, one of the things that we didn't cover today and very less spoken about is there's a dearth. While the attackers are many, there's a dearth of cybersecurity practitioners and people who are really on the protective side, right? And imagine now that you have to worry about learning 100 technologies because there are hundreds of vendors and things out there, right? So it becomes really important for organizations to think about the strategy that gives them a uniform approach to security, and that's what I always believe in, is that there's always going to be a defense in depth, but you have to understand or make decisions. Where do you want to put your defenses? Is it going to be at your doorstep, or is it going to be far away from there?
Thank you. I think you raised a good point. There are more bad guys because you don't have to pay taxes on Bitcoin, right? So anyway, so I'll go on to the next question. As the user reliance grows more on the internet banking due to the COVID-19 pandemic, actually even beyond COVID-19 now, I think COVID is almost history now. It's business as usual. There is a high probability that your website and APIs were not ready to handle that amount of traffic, impacting user experience and dealing with degraded performance. I think some of our panelists touched on their challenges when the COVID started in the first question. Obviously, the question is, did you anticipate this and how did you handle the situation? I think none of us anticipated this, I'm sure. I mean, we might have had a DR plan and all, but I don't think anybody expected where everybody would be working from home. But the more important is, I want the panelists to really share their experience, how they handle the situation. Because I think the whole thing was like being on a quicksand for most CISOs, CIOs, for about the first 2 to 4 weeks of this pandemic. So over to you all, gentlemen, for your experience. Whoever wants can share your experience. Much appreciated.
Yes, so I'll talk on this. From a banking perspective, I think we had a very good, from a regulator perspective, I think the inputs were very quick to be given, say how to do work from home, how to improve the BCP plans. Certain also pitched in with their own this thing, because like you said, nobody knew what is to be done, right? We had those BCP, but they were all inadequate, right? Maybe they were not tested enough, the incident response plans were not enough, right? All this had to be done in a quick manner, and for that the regulator was there. Obviously, the security team, the IT teams, they have all pitched in. Even the OEMs, for that matter. I know when this pandemic started, we had calls coming from various VPN solution providers saying, we'll give you 60 days of free VPN access for your employees, or work from home kind of access, or any. So you can test a lot of things, right? So this, the whole ecosystem worked together to actually begin so that the continuity can be maintained, right? So the business can continue as usual, because banks being an essential service, we could not have the luxury to just shut shop and sit quiet for 21 days when the first lockdown started, right? So we have taken those steps, and now I think, like you said, it is the new normal. Everybody is getting used to working from home, or maybe going to office in a very maybe sanitized way, or whatever you call it. So that's how it is.
Yes, I also want you to give your perspective, because you have been supporting your customers in this pandemic, right? How did you guys manage? I mean, you are not like a banker. You didn't have a special police pass to go everywhere.
No. So that's what. So banks have, I think banks did, from a digital banking perspective, those services were already there. The only thing was to advertise them more, right? We did a lot of customer awareness through our social media. We did promote the digital channels more. The mobile banking or the net banking was advertised more, so that the at least touchless banking, or what do you say?
No. I agree with you. Everybody started using all the apps, fintech apps, everything fully there. But what I want to ask KRS is, clients like you, maybe you're not his client, but okay, they support a multitude of security products, including, I'm sure, VPN solutions, the whole basket. So I just want his perspective, how he supported you all, because obviously, bankers could put some sticker in the car and the police would allow them to go anywhere. I could not take out my car for 2 months in Mumbai, right? So,
yeah. So,
of course, Babu would give me a press sticker maybe, but anyway, yeah.
So, yeah, I think that would have worked, right? I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't use even such such stickers on yeah.
So go ahead,
yeah. So like Mr. Gurpreet mentioned, even we rolled out a lot of pre-packaged solutions to work from remote, work from home, and things like that. So that the intention here was just to give a quick start to the organizations, including banking fraternity, who's actually, working from home for a banking fraternity would have never felt earlier. They may not even have a framework which is written to, give the responsibility of each employee and the risk which, they need to take care. Yeah, so that's one portion of the challenge and the solution which we could offer from our side as a solution integrators. Yes, I'm very happy to say there are two customers, on all three customers in the panel are our customers, director and then customers. Yeah, so yeah, the actual challenge which we had from the supply chain is that we supposed to deliver very critical equipment to a critical service delivery organization like telcos, like UIDA, certain police infrastructure and things like that, including defense. We actually, to be very frank, we actually struggled for some time to understand the immediate process, which was, I mean, the regulation which was implemented by government of India, saying that what do I do in customs? Okay, I clear the customs. If the customs, sorry, yeah, if customs happens to be working in essential services, then I need to move the material from customs warehouse to the customer, and customer is as far as 300 kilometers sometimes. So we went through a great challenge, and 90% of them are essential services to be delivered. So this is the supply chain challenge which actually we went through. Otherwise, as an organization, I think we were ready from the day one to jump into work from home.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so,
now I'm going to accelerate.
Yeah.
And sorry, I have to. No,
Please.
I wanted to bring out the pain really, because
I understand.
Everybody has worked as a team for this, and I wanted a perspective from you from the other side of the fence, where we all take vendors for granted.
Yeah. This is exactly what exactly we went through. Yeah.
Right. So let me move on quickly, because I think I'm running out of time. My timekeeper is annoyed with me. I'm not done a good job today. But anyway, let's go on. So this is about the advent of the hybrid and private cloud infrastructure. How do you ensure the web performance and security services work together across your distributed data centers and hosting environments with the required performance controls and security? Right. So this hybrid cloud is big. IBM is leading. Yesterday, they have made a new division into the cloud. A lot of exciting things happening here. Indian banks also are looking at hybrid cloud. So I think this is a very relevant question. If any of you are using this, please share your experience. So any of you using it for your business? This question I'll repeat again. With the advent of hybrid and private cloud infrastructures, how do you ensure the web performance and security services work across your distributed data center and hosting environments with the required performance controls and security? So basically, we are talking about cloud governance or a hybrid cloud sort of environment. No, otherwise I'll always throw it to Azim. I will not take the class. I'm not the professor today. So if you are not using the cloud because RBI is not so comfortable.
Yeah, I will comment on that. So nowadays, financial institutions are increasingly moving to cloud. So there are basically, in addition to on-prem deployments, there are wide amount of cloud usage. And for the banks, normally it will be either a private cloud or a hybrid kind of environment. So unlike an on-prem deployment, for a cloud deployment, it is a little bit difficult to ensure the security on an ongoing basis. So like initially, the kind of approach was like ensuring adequate due diligence audit initially and on an ongoing basis, maintaining SLAs with the service provider like that. And from that, it has now moved to usage of tools like ASP, cloud security posture management, like that. The additional tools are also helping us to ensure that the configurations are being maintained on an ongoing basis, like that. Then the how the usage, access to the applications, if those are SaaS applications, who is handling the administrative roles, how are the access to the administrative accounts managed. All those things are very critical from a security standpoint. So these things also to ensure that adequate controls are in place, multi-factor authentications are in place, continuous monitoring is in place. Those multiple type of controls and steps are needed when we move on to cloud. So then how the data is stored in the cloud environment, there's a co-tenancy available. So what's the time period where the data is stored in the cloud? All these same points are also to be considered and managed effectively to reduce the damage.
Thank you, sir. Subrata, you wanted to say something, and then I will move on to the last question.
Yeah, so I'm audible?
Yes. Sorry for calling you Subrata. I used to have a friend. Apologies.
It's okay. No problem. So I think of late last few years back, we started this kind of hybrid model. I think we are not gone to full-fledged cloud as such, but with the process of building a roadmap for the cloud and strategy. But of late, by various means, we have been onto the private cloud. Most of our stuff is virtualized, and also we are using some of this. Many of us are using O365 of Microsoft, so Azure platform, and some of the other SaaS models. So as I talked about earlier, I see this data protection, data privacy, that is becoming very, very predominant discussion, and how we protect, especially with the O365, OneDrive kind of environment. So the data protection today, because we need to provide access at any time on all devices to all the users, right? So that's why we thought most of our daily applications, highly used application. And by the way, like we've seen a huge, drastic, significant jump into collaboration tool like Microsoft Teams or WebEx. So which was not, 2 years we could not increase the adoption, but in 2 months it went from 30% to 80%. But at the same time, we need to protect the data and also other stuff. So so CASB and other kind of a DLP on the mail side DLP, this kind of solutions, and also MDM kind of solution. These are I see most of the implementation happening around these places.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent perspective. So, now this question, one more for KRS. I'm not going to let you go off easy today. Okay? Next time you should think twice before coming as a panelist. Okay.
My pleasure.
Sorry.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So you have experience working with major financial service institutions across the region. Okay. What is your take on API economy growth in the banking sector? And are we moving more towards open banking? Also, please highlight some of the primary challenges associated with this, because security is a major concern there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. We've been participating in the various digital initiative of the banks from past 12 years, be it security or digital process automation. From the perimeter to the endpoint, or to the recently we've been participating pretty well with on SOC 2.0 initiatives, or any large initiatives on digital banking or data lake and things like that. So that is been our participation with them. Looking at the new definition of success in the banking industry, I think it has got a lot of association to do with adoption of technology. Thanks to fintech companies, how they have really set up a competitive infrastructure and products and market outside for participation for banking industry, along with either collaboration or innovation or through a partnership. API is actually, I think it is no more a technology. It's not limited itself to addressing, rather facing inside into the organization, maybe to the bank. And now it has to be more open. It has to be simpler for consumption of partners. It is more of a channel for a bank to go out to the market space, which has been created by the fintech organizations. So in one sense, making it simpler and taking the whole API to the market in the form of product. Okay, that's one form of going to market. Okay, on the other side, making it simpler and making it available, making it easy for consumption is actually through the huge security challenges. Looking at the concept of open banking. Today, banking, does not stop with the true transactions. Rather, should not stop with the true transaction. It actually has to, somewhere start digital journey of its customer through a banking, which is a captive, customers of the bank, and somewhere look forward to continue the journey of, along with the customer. Maybe to a fintech platform where he's moving for doing transactions, maybe to the payment side of it, okay, maybe to the social side of it. There are so many social, payment platforms which have come. So basically, I think it's an opportunity for them to expand the business opportunities along with customer by participating in his digital journey. It is not only limited to the retail banking; it is also to the corporate. I think today, there are so many services of the banks which need to be delivered to the corporate at its doorstep instead of any large corporate coming to bank to consume its services. Another thing which we have seen is the legacy process, legacy systems, which could become a great hurdle internally in the banking system. We have also seen platforms like Uno by SBI, which is actually a lifestyle platform. I would call it as a lifestyle platform. Okay, largely published by a bank. You actually need not to be a SBI customer to consume a Uno platform. You can actually be a normal user, download it and start consuming this platform. I think this is the new revolutionary approach by the banking industry. So all comes with the challenges as all our friends spoke in the panel. So you need to keep the open API. You need to keep it open, keep it simpler for consumption. But what's the rule for consumption? Okay, what are the framework you put around the consumption? I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Number two is we have no definite regulation put across on the other side to the fintech companies as much as the banks are regulated on one side. Like Biju sir just said, that I think the protecting personal data of the customer is the greatest challenge today when you get into the platforms like API. Tomorrow, regulatory will jump on you, a customer will jump on you because you're actually sitting with his private data. Okay, it cannot be that you close the door. I mean, you need to be in the market, you need to participate, you need to use the channel to go out to sell your other products. Okay, but on the other side, if you lose confidence of the customer, okay, it is going to be a great challenge. Regulatory is going to actually pump onto the bank, not onto the fintech, even for a small fraud or small data theft. So I think that is another challenge or a commitment which bank has to move with. Number three, a few things like DLP or well monitored, well tuned. Am I there? Yeah, well tuned web application firewalls and so that's one. And number two, when you start working from home in the scenarios like COVID-19, basically load on the infrastructure. Okay, that's another thing which actually I think which needs to be looked into. You become there might be a scenario which people are talking about banking is required but not the banks. Okay, so where banks are becoming more and more transactional agencies behind a very large application or a very large financial application, or maybe behind mobile banking or a large e-commerce applications. So these are the few requirements in the market and the threat which is associated with that. That's what is our observation in these days.
Subbu, you
Hope I was audible.
Yeah, you are audible. Subbu is on mute.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Subbu, you are still.
No, I think I spoke too much, so the machine muted me on its own. Okay. So Asim, quickly, if you don't mind, can you sum it up? So with your perspective, and then I will move on to the summation of this. I think Babu looks very nervous from my time perspective.
So, I have just a small question to Asim. I don't know, and to others.
Okay.
Like give me a couple of minutes. So
sure, sir.
One side we are talking about this API as being really as a commodity or become commoditized, right, over last few years, and we keep on talking about open banking. I think I want to ask you, Asim, and some of you. So at the same time, when you go for like last few months back, we wanted to start this journey basically as a mutual fund, because one of the use cases for us is that we get a huge inflow and outflow of money every day, some few thousands of crores every day. So, and we have to manage that money as a cash management within a few hours, we suppose between 10 to 2 o'clock. I need to know between 10 to 2 how much money I have in my 70 accounts so that I can deploy that. And also I need to pay my customers within that time. So when we went to the banks for the API integration, getting my statement, but still is a huge process. There are a lot of regulatory, legal, and other process. It's not at all. So there are two aspects. Once we are talking about, like most of the fintechs are integrating with banks on a open API or open API banking. But when we go to a real world, we see because banks are, especially Indian banks, are not yet, they are very, very hesitant because it takes, I remember we did a POC, it took 2 months to get the logistics or legal clearance done. So that's it. I don't know. There's some dichotomy there. I don't know. Obviously, there's a security threat and other issues. So that
Sure.
if you can, Asim can figure out something. Yeah.
No, sure, absolutely. You rightly said. I think from that perspective, Subhajit, we've seen this problem being prevalent in some markets, not all. Again, some markets are more driven by economy, and the regulatory measures are in parallel with that. So I'll give an example. Like in Hong Kong, I was talking to one of the customers almost 3 years back, and it was made quite clear to them by the regulator that the open banking or the open APIs are going to be the next norm for them. It's just because to stay competitive in the market, and to bring the products and services, and to bring the whole economy system forward, that is what they needed at that point of time. I'm sure with the different regulatory aspects, even in India, there are definite considerations around that. Sometimes it could have to go through a lot more discussions because of the very diversified nature of the economy, or the way it operates. But I'm with you in terms of it is not a very seamless process in some organizations and some companies, even some countries. I would assume that in some places we've seen that moving very swiftly because they already have the framework established. They already know what needs to be done. I think we are catching up on that front, and maybe next couple of years we'll be in a point where we see this being more adopted, and the right framework being built to make it much easier in terms of integrations.
Thank you, Sima. I just want to add a little bit from my expertise. And that what you're stating, and the good news is the RTGS is going to be open 24 hours by December. I think that was RBI's announcement yesterday. More work for you all, but fantastic for the economy if we could have that ecosystem. This national clearing, real-time money movement has been a pain right along. In 1990, when we were setting up India's first automated national exchange, not NSE, it is known as OTCI, it is dead and gone. We had this big issue. No banker would say, I will do a national clearing for me. And it was only some 25 cities we had to clear those days. End of day, sir, you're in the mutual fund industry, you know what I'm talking about. And we had to settle the brokers. And only one bank, which was a foreign bank, Citibank, agreed to do it for us. And then they set up a system for national clearing. But every day when I was the chief operating officer of that exchange, I had to listen to people crying. The broker crying for 8 and 4 and rounding off by Citibank, saying Citibank chore hai, mera paisa le rahe. Little realizing no other bank could do it in that country in 1991. Okay, today again we are struggling on that on 2020. This is ridiculous. I think I'm not against the regulator. Bankers have to go and hammer the regulator, which you guys don't do. And you have to bring that change across. It's not about security. Because the shorter the window, I know exactly the frustration for you in that 4 or 6 hours window to transfer money. And every minute counts because that money has to work for you as a mutual fund. You can't park it with yourself doing nothing. And I mean, this is nothing to do with security. This gets into risk actually and financial management. Sorry, I mean, it's not part of this seminar. But I fully agree with you. But I think we're getting there one day at a time. And hopefully, it's a very good point you have raised, sir. But I think the APIs have to be stronger. They have to be secured. And they have to move ahead. Okay, I think that's all is my little bit on this. So moving ahead, I'm only going to take one question from the audience. It's open. And there's only one person who has asked all the questions. Thank you, Sugesh Nagendra, for all the questions. I'm not going to take the tech questions with your kind permission, but you have put up a last question, which is very nice. which is DevSecOps or SecDevOps, and why. Okay. So basically he's asking, will the dev come first, sec come first, ops come first, or will a sec come first, dev comes ops, and why? So I open to you all, from your perspective, what you think works best, a DevSecOps or a SecDevOps?
Maybe for me, it's security by design. Always I'm a security guy, so security will come first, always at the fourth. So SecDevOps, for that is one line answer for that.
Okay.
So now
Yeah,
there's no question of first and second. Now everybody should
Yeah.
be together. So I think all should work together. The entire DevOps is basically to stop the fighting between developers and the operations people. So the same logic applies. Everybody should be together so that finger pointing and blame game doesn't happen. So that's the entire genesis of DevOps.
Yeah, I think it has to be a parallel process. I completely agree. I think technology has also moved forward, together. There are tools which has come on the security side, which actually gives a live feedback on development, stage. So technology has moved to give you the live, feedback on the security side when you do development. I think it's a parallel process.
Good. Actually, right now I'm reading something known as FinOps. The world has moved on, actually, because FinOps is a new mantra beyond DevSecOps. I mean, I got introduced as a 2020 avatar, where we are talking about the finance part and the operations part. In between is the security and the cloud and the tech bundled in. That is taken for granted today, just as a perspective. But yes, thank you. I think all of us are security professionals, so security comes for us. Good answer. Babu, I think I'll hand it over to you.
So great. I think that was a great conversation, Subbu. I loved being an observer. And one of the most important thing in cloud is when in a cloud, your data goes out of your network and goes into different, different networks. And today, the security professionals or the technology professionals all over the world are also equally concerned about, is their data safe the moment it travels out of their network or out of their cloud? So what is the kind of control somebody has on these kind of data, and can that be wiped out if it is being misused, or how is it that they can retain a control? The second thing that is also happening in that atmosphere is cloud security, where you speak about, where many a time the data travels out of the organizations, gets into a cloud, gets assessed for security, and comes back. These are some of the questions which I have been hearing from people for quite some time, and there are a lot of security professionals who have been working on this, and especially with data regulations of data residing within the city. If anybody wants to throw some experience into this, it would be a great thing.
Yeah, I can just briefly touch upon from my side, because being the cloud services provider, this question is naturally asked to us, and we've got very interesting conversations with customers over the years, because the market matures when it matures. You start with the cloud journey. So 10 years back, cloud was an experiment. Today, barely a day goes by when you do not talk about cloud, right? Otherwise, your data is not fulfilled. It has become that much integrated in our daily routine. So in terms of the security of the cloud, I think there are a couple of things that I want to leave the audience with in mind. One is, don't confuse every cloud services work in the same way. Cloud services provider is an umbrella term. The way AWS versus GCP versus Azure works versus the ways like edge platforms work are quite different, right? Some of them store your data, some of them don't, right? So it's very important for as an organization for you to understand what is the balancing act that you need to make for security, because security is all about balancing act, right? You have a great user experience and you've got a great security, but nobody uses the system. Is that a system that we want? I think probably no, right? At the same time, you have too much of things going on, but there's no security. That becomes a problem. The second thing is that often the regulatory requirements themselves are not well understood in some limitations or capacity, right? They're broader terms. For example, if you look at the RBI regulation of not moving the data across, then what sort of data are you talking about? This is really essential to understand, right? If you're talking about core banking data, then you have to put your measures around that. If you're talking about the user data, which is static and cacheable as an example, you would not have to worry about that. So it's extremely important as an organization for you to assess what sort of data you really have in cloud, and what sort of fences you want to put around it. If you do not know what to protect, and then it's really important that you'll fall in the strategy of how to protect will not really be an adequate strategy from my perspective.
Thank you. Yeah. I'll add a little bit to that, Asim, because from the governance perspective, I mean, let me speak for Cloud Security Alliance, with whom I'm still associated in some way. They have excellent guidance known as, I think this last version was version 4, because I was teaching the subject to some MBA students last week. And they have 14 domains in this cloud security journey. And it will be a good read. Actually, I had also thought it some time ago at IDBRT when they were running the cloud computing courses in Hyderabad. Now my friend Keith does that, I think. But I think it's important for you all either to go to IDBRT and go through that whole cloud thing which they do. I'm not pushing RBI here. I'm not the salesman. But they have a good program put together because they're a research institute. And the campus, of course, is COVID time now. I think they're doing it virtually now. But there are also other people where you can also read on your own. And it's important to understand these 14 domains. It's not about data residency or data in motion, which Babu talked about, data at rest. There's much more to it. There are also, it includes our great foreign minister of India also and other countries. What is the arrangements? Okay, at a very different level, the legal stuff, what are the treaties which you have signed and stuff like that. Okay, this cloud tightening up actually started. There was a question here on GDPR, but since it was not applicable to India and I was running out of time, I actually stopped it. Okay, for so many of you will be aware, if you are working for a foreign bank or if you are to connect to SWIFT or something which runs out of Europe, you will have a little bit of GDPR compliance, which you have to take care of at this point of time. Okay, but I think the key issue here is this thing is getting murkier and getting more complex. It is just not just about putting a firewall, bells and whistles. And the last and most important thing I want to add, I mean, if I'm allowed to speak 1 more minute, Babu, is that everything has become real time. There is nothing like yesterday and now. Everything is real time and you don't know from where it is coming. You have to get those tools in place and you have to budget for it. And you have to buy it yesterday. Now think, I know I've been a CISO myself. A normal cycle time in India to get a budget of 10 rupees is about 6 months. And about 100 PowerPoints points before you get, unless your CEO and the board is little wise. Unfortunately, the CISO comes under risk. Okay, and the risk comes under I don't know whom, and it's lost many times is under the CFO. Yes, RBI has changed the structure as one of our panelists mentioned, where now the risk is separate and the CISO comes under risk. But that happened a few years back. But again, you have always at loggerheads with the IT team. And these are some of the challenges, and as somebody else mentioned, these silos have to break. Security is everybody's problem, not just the CISO's problem. When I go implementing security controls, I actually get fed up. Everybody thinks it's IT problem because the CIOs, my buddy says, come and help me. I tell him, boss, I cannot do the certification because you guys want corporate. He doesn't trust. I put in the structure. I've stopped it now, but I've done it for 1 or 2 startup banks in India. But I think that journey is quite boring. So I understand and empathize with what you're doing. But I think the fact remains is cloud adoption is here to stay. Mobile banking is here to stay. Geo network is coming. So every damn tehsil will have one network. BSNL has laid cables. So these are real issues of India which need to be taken on a war footing. And I think I'll stop now with that. That is my perspective as a tech professional or a security professional.
Fantastic. So
Mr. Babu, just a point to add here is that I think we are talking about data movement, captive, share with the cloud, hybrid, and things like that. I think one basic stuff which is happening, and we are also participating in the banking industry, is that to identify where is the sensitive data in the system which is lying with us. So moment we do our process and identify where the data is lying, I think that becomes a decision making asset for us.
So I was actually very impressed when I saw that presentation in Singapore FinTech Festival last year, where we were speaking about how you are going to chase the data which is going outside the cloud, which is outside your network, and you can actually wipe it out if it is a sensitive data or if it is going into wrong hand. I never knew of such kind of things that were happening. So I thought probably, this is the future, because we are talking about real-time analytics, we are talking about real-time experiences and all that, and same time real-time fraud as well. So that is why I brought this thing into the picture today, into the conversation, and probably in the future I want to do something called as AAA, all about API, where I want to talk about everything about API, be it business on one side, security, the third side, quality. Again, standardization and quality about API is a very big topic also to take up when we have this conversation. These are some things that are there in my mind, and we need to probably make it a lot more focused so that it is of interest to everyone, and they don't look at the watch but look at the screen and really look forward to hearing more from you. Great, friends. I think you have made it a fantastic session today, and you gave some real-time experiences, and that is what made this a lot more interesting. Thank you very much for making it an interesting session.